Pergamum, getting ready to visit the Acropolis. And we're going up on a cable car. Should be pretty awesome. Enough room?
Yeah, no, come on.
So I'm getting a view from the top city down below. Wow, that's good. Quite a view.
That's Brad Pitt over there.
Yeah. I love your great kid.
They got stuff for sale and more cats.
Ama enkazdan sağ çıkmış.
For all our sites in the English Bible, okay? So Pergamum is the Greek name, Pergamum Latin. So it's not misspelled, it's just one has a Greek ending. We're more familiar with Latin endings, okay?
Special forces, they live here, the group, okay?
After the Pergamum kingdom was created, here they built those buildings that we can see on this plan. If you follow from here, I made something very clever. I left Greek era. Now, differently than the other sites, we don't see really too much Roman, but mostly Greek. This will be much. The only structure of the Acropolis from the Roman era is the famous temple dedicated to Trajan that you can see on this plan on the left side, on the highest point. And at the bottom of this, you can see those arches next to each other. If you come from that point, from this angle, you can have a better view. So those arches, those are the platform parts. Okay? Seal, and this is very steep. You can see how steep this place is. We have also another structure at the top, which is like a court, and there is a small temple in the middle. This court, it was the famous library, which was considered the second largest library of the ancient world. So they needed railways. Who has the railways? Western countries, British, French, German technology entered to the country, and they started to build the railways. This is how our antiquities went through Europe to United States, wherever you can see today. So where you are walking, those are the railway tiles. Okay, so this is the result. As a result, so this brought everything from Turkey to Europe, I will say. The area where the library was located. Today the archaeologists, they just erected a part of those columns just to show us where it was located. When you look to the size, it's a quite big library. There were 2 levels, and in the middle part it was an area like an agora that we saw in.
He's put an embargo on the papyrus for the library here. Then they had to come up with an alternative writing surface. So parchment had been used for centuries as a writing material, but here they perfected it. And so this becomes very important for this transition of writing moving from scroll to codex. And of course the Christians were some of the first to use codexes then for a writing surface. So we're in this transitional period. Remember, Paul is writing to Timothy, bring my scrolls, especially my parchments. So Paul is traveling with scripture portions that apparently were in both forms of writing surface that were here. And maybe you saw something recently, an announcement about one of the most intact Masoretic texts of scripture that was called the Sassoon manuscript that went on sale from Sotheby's. One of the earliest copies of the Masoretic text missing only, I think it was 5 leaves, which are the first 10 chapters of Genesis. And it had 500 parchment leaves for the Hebrew Bible, dating from about the 9th to the 11th century. So again, one of our earliest complete texts of the Hebrew Scriptures, believed to have been copied in northern Syria or northern Israel or southwest Syria. So the perfection of parchment then as a writing service attached to this city is extremely important for the use of Scripture as it develops in Christian communities.
Temple, which was located just on this side after this wall, which is built by the archaeologists. But this area, we have all the pieces from the temple. By the way, these placed here in purpose by the archaeologists. They number it, and in the future, if they want to rebuild the temple, they will use all those pieces. For the temple itself is built at the top. And remember, here we are talking about the larger temple, and it's quite big. So they need a big platform. They also need a place for the sacrifices, which is the altars. And then the temple, it's built with this stone, which is the stone of this region, andesite stone, but it's covered with the marble. So the marble was coming from the quarries on those mountains.
So he had to extend that and build a platform, and that is where, when he dies, then Hadrian finishes it. So look at a couple of them on Thyatira. And so we can see the demos of Thyatira is congratulating their neighboring city on the fact of the Pergamums on the proton, the first and the second Neocorus of the emperor. So again, mentioning the first one under Augustus in 29, the second one here under Trajan in the early 2nd century. So Thyatira, Pergamum, 2 of our 7 cities together, and showing the union or harmony between these 2 cities in terms of their accolades for this distinct honor. So this is the first city in Asia now that has received the title as second Neocorus. So the emperors and the gods in the ancient world also had local epithets as well. And so we can see here graphically some of the linguistic challenges that the Christians had. We talked about Polycarp refusing to apostatize and offer incense offering to Caesar. So talking about to the emperor, to Caesar, and we have Trajan's name here as the emperor talks about his victories over the Germans, the Dacians, and here we have Kurios. And so a very common title for the emperor. Of course, in the Greek Jewish scriptures, this is the name of translated Lord, as well as in the Greek New Testament. And here the claim is that he's the Lord of the Geis Kai Thalasos, of the land and the sea. So we get our word geography from this word here, land and the sea. And so this is the Demos and the Boule, again, that have erected this at the time of becoming the first and the second Neocorus of the empire here in Pergamum. And so this is the question that the Christians are dealing with. Who is the Lord? Is it Caesar or is it Jesus? And so a nice inscription showing the homage paid to the emperor here, calling him Lord.
The view up here is spectacular.
Did you get that on video?
Yeah.
That was real.
Man, look how high we are. It's like it's a half a mile straight down. There's a theater over there, which I've covered a bit. Man, that is so steep. I'm standing on top of the Acropolis in Pergamum. It's really steep off right behind me. You'll see the amazing stuff as I rotate around here. There's a theater over there that's super steep. And you can see in the background some columns started emerging from the temple. On the other side of me, there was a huge library. Just an amazing sight. So here we have Trajan's temple. Later finished by Hadrian. Somewhere around on the other side is the temple, not the temple, but the altar of Zeus. I'm gonna see if I can find it. You can see this is pretty impressive stuff. All marble. Go around this way a little bit. Some of this stuff is intact. Going around the huge monument. You can see the height of the pillars up there. Columns, I think they call them columns, not pillars. You can see just a magnificent beauty of this place. Okay, I'm in the Temple of Trajan, later on completed by Hadrian, on top of the Acropolis, which is incredibly high. It feels like it's about a half mile straight down from the sides. You see the height of these pillars and the tremendous view of the city back down that way. And pretty amazing place to be, pretty amazing. Just leaving the Temple of Trajan, heading this direction down a big marketplace or
You can go back a little bit, but yeah.
Not this itself, so this is where Trajan's statue would have been. The altar would have been back.
that would have been the altar. Okay. So this would have been the altar where they sacrificed things. Oh yeah, oh yeah. And it's probably 6 feet high. Let's see if I can walk up here. This is the view there looking off into the valley. And I'm standing right on the altar where they sacrificed things in Trajan's temple to himself. The walls are about 6 feet high. I'm standing up on a base here. And again, you can see if I rotate, it looks right off into the amazing valley. About a half a mile drop off that cliff right behind me. Still on top of the Acropolis. Have some free time walking around. It's amazing how you can just walk around and stuff, touch it, climb on it. There's almost no restrictions to that kind of thing. An earthquake completely destroyed the place. So like 100 years ago, it was completely in shambles, and they've attempted to re-erect part of it. And it's a working process. Got a bunch of stuff lying on the ground over here. But camera can't do justice to the side here. It really can't. It's not possible. The empire would have selected like the very best place in the whole known world to set up something extremely special. And you can just see the weather, the altitude, magnificence of the structures around here. These would all had top on them in the day, and it was something. And I'm going to continue walking around here for a bit. Again, on top of the Acropolis, I'm kind of headed around to what I think is the north direction. You can see off into the valley, and you'll be able to see some of the structures behind me. Still on top of the Acropolis, looking off down into the valley, you can see the size of cars, and that's how far it is, a long way down there. It's a pathway built out of railroad ties. I'm still walking around that pathway. A little bit perilous here. It's kind of wet. Well, don't watch it, I'm going to slip. Continuing my walk around the top of the Acropolis, kind of on the back side of it right now. You can look off into the valley here. It's a long way down there. Still trucking up the mountain on the back side of the Acropolis. Trying to get back where I was. Trying to find the temple of Zeus. I think it's more like the altar of Zeus. I'm not sure. Getting near the top, kind of back up on the top height here. You can see the old marble column work. Missed a step. Pay more attention. You have to keep your eye on where you're walking because everything's so spectacular. Again, we're in the city of Pergamum on the Acropolis. I better get with it. Might be left behind. So I've got Kyler here that's taking care of me, so I have nothing to worry about. Nothing.
I don't want to give you a false sense of security.
Well, your Turkish sounds pretty fluent to me, but I don't have a good ear for that. We appear not to be left behind. It's a very good thing. Yeah, there goes the group. That's our friends over there. We're trying to catch up with them.
Skirmishes, they were fighting each other. Finally, they had a decisive battle when the Attalids were able to stop the Gauls from coming westward into their kingdom, and they defeated them in battle, and she became the the bringer of victory over the Gauls for the Attalids, and that's how her name came to be. And then one of the most famous works of art from this period, maybe you've seen it or you can look it up on the internet, The Dying Gaul, showing this warrior in his final stage of death, of him being defeated by the Attalids. So frequently reproduced, but it comes as a result of this conflict in which the Attalids prevail.
Or, you know, for those Celtic people, the Gauls, very powerful guys. They're always smelling very bad. Yeah. You know why? Because they were washing their body 2 times in their life. Once when they were born, and one they die before they bury. Yeah, this is but very powerful guys. In here, in this image, this guy is killing himself. He's suiciding, by the way, because he doesn't want to be slave of the Attalids. Okay, he killed his wife Again, he knows that his wife will be the slave for the Attalus. He preferred to die unless this is a very important image. So those are the Roman copies that made by the Romans in Rome, the marble ones. The original ones were, this is the place, the base of the Temple of Athena, that I will show you a little bit how it was. First century BC column is Pergamum.
Troas.
And from Troas, by the way, as you are doing, exactly, enjoy it, that you can sit on it, because if it was in the United States, you would not be approached 2 meters. You can see the base of the altar of Zeus.
So whoever doing the reading, get ready, and when Cenk's done, we'll do that. So.
Yes, and then we will read the letter from here. Yes, please. This is what we have. I mean, with those 2 pine trees out the middle in today. Yes. And the altar itself, it was like that when it's completed.
So altar's this location.
So this altar has friezes on each side and a circle, all this. Enemies like giants. So those presented the goals, Galatians, and themselves they presented like naked people, almost presented as gods maybe. Okay, they are naked, but they are fighting against the giants, huge, big enemies. So they take this victory very serious. I mean, because the Gauls, they were using big weapons, especially the sword. It's called Thracian sword. Maybe you heard it. It's huge, bigger than me. So they were holding, and when they cut a person, they were able to cut the person with one blow from head to toe. 2 pieces. You can imagine how powerful they were. They brought it to Germany, and then the First World started, everything stopped, and the Turkey created. We know very well from the historians and from the elders of Pergamum, they are saying that during the Second World War, some submarines came to the harbor that I showed you on the way to get some food from Turkish citizens. And we were not involved in this war. People were afraid to not be attacked. They just gave some food to them. And some of those guys, believe it or not, they came to Pergamum, took the place pieces which is left, and took the submarines, and they left and bring it some pieces to Germany again and again. I mean, there are some collections or some pieces, small pieces, are taken like this. But we know very well that before the First World started, all the altar was gone to Germany. It was given by the Ottoman authorities. That's the reason why we have a big debate now. We are trying to take it back, but the Germans, they show us those papers, which is signed by the Ottoman Sultans. Okay, there are many ideas about this. Some scholars, they suggest that this was the altar because this was like a seat. Okay, for some scholars, is the whole Acropolis was the throne of Satan. For some scholars, it was the place where the Asclepion was because of the snake symbol, and it was like the Satan's symbol. They were in Pergamum. They were executing the people in a very cruel way. They were putting those people inside of a metal bowl, and they were heating this, and they were almost cooking the person inside. And specially designed mount was taking all the noise which comes outside, and it's like the animal was crying or saying something, and when the guy was dying, was just obviously shouting, and the people were hearing this in a amount, and they were probably taking pleasure by seeing this when the person was dying there. Again, some scholars, they suggest that
Angel of the church in Pergamum writes the words of him who has the sharp two-edged sword. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is, yet you hold fast my name, and you did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you where Satan dwells. But I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold the teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to put a stumbling block before the sons of Israel, so that they might eat food sacrificed to idols and practice sexual immorality. So also you have some who hold the teaching of the Nicolaitans. Therefore repent, If not, I will come to you soon and war against them with the sword of my mouth. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To the one who conquers, I will give some of the hidden manna, and I will give him a white stone with a new name written on the stone that no one knows except the one who receives it.
This particular message is one of the most complicated for interpretation with the imagery in it. Again, Old Testament background. So between this and that, we've got the quintessential false prophet and the evil queen, Balaam and Jezebel, of course, are brought into the text here. This group called the Nicolaitans are introduced in the Ephesian letter but never explain what they believe, because the explanation comes here in this particular message. And so their beliefs seem to be very similar to the teaching of Balaam of accommodation here with the prevailing culture. And so when they talk about food sacrificed to idols, just imagine on a daily basis animals were sacrificed here on this altar. Portions of the meat would be the fat burned. Then, similar to Jerusalem, particular cuts would be given to the priests and all those who were attending, and then the rest of the carcass is carried down and sold in the public meat market, the Pergamum, like we saw in Pergamum. So this becomes now the issue, especially for the Gentiles. Can we eat that meat that's been sold or been previously sacrificed to a pagan deity and then brought down in here? And of course, Paul addresses it. It's a problem with the Corinthians. It's addressed here. And Paul's solution is that if your conscience allows, you can go ahead and eat that meat. Of course, Jews would never eat it. This would be not kosher meat. But Gentiles, if their conscience allowed, would let them eat it. Now, in the middle city down here, we have a very good example of a dining room. So many of the ancient temples had dining areas attached to them. So once again, as we talked about the synagogue yesterday, the temples had a multi-function purpose as well. We know from some sources that they actually had birthday parties, banquets, other types of gatherings, that were taking place in these dining rooms in these. Now, and we also knew the ancient trade guilds would hold their union meetings, so to speak, in these dining rooms as well. And so Paul addresses this. Personally, you can buy the meat, but to participate in these pagan banquets, verboten. He says, no, you can't continue to do that. And so you can imagine these folks now withdrawing even from your trade guild. If you can't participate in that, you become sort of economically disenfranchised, out of you losing your networks for your business and things like that for non-participation. So people have to make a choice. They're struggling. And of course, you've got some voices within the church say, hey, you can do both. You can follow Jesus and continue to go into the eating at the banquets and doing some of these things. And of course, this is what John is just excoriating those false teachers who are advocating that particular position of accommodation. So this is a problem here, problem in Thyatira as well, and I think probably in all the churches. So this is the issue pervades all of these as well. Here, Antipas, probably a leader in the church who's singled out to be made an example. In Revelation 20, we see the description of those who have been beheaded as the martyrs. And so this is the only method of death that we see portrayed here. And this is probably, I think this is how Antipas was probably beheaded here and martyred here in this city as a church leader. But who could do that? I mean, it's not the pagan cults who had that kind of authority here. It was the Roman governor who would make rounds to the various cities, and he had the right of the sword. So you have this very strong sword imagery here. The Roman governor would have the ius gladiae. He would be sent out from the Roman Senate, and he had the right of capital punishment within his province. And of course, this is the whole issue with Jesus and Pilate. The Jewish leaders, the Sanhedrin, they would like to kill him, but they don't have the ius gladiae in Judea, in the province, and so that's why they have to involve Pontius Pilate. to give that death sentence to him. And so it's the Roman governor and the authorities here that issue the death sentence for Antipas as a warning to other Christians as well. And so from my perspective, I think the whole throne or seat of Satan has to do with the Roman imperial cult that we see featured so much in the latter half of Revelation from chapter 13 on, and they're the real power that the church struggles with here at the end of the first century on for 2 more centuries. It's the Romans who are opposing them. So anyway, that's my view on what the particular struggle is that's going on. Government officials like to see potential tax money going out of their areas. So several times they tried to stop this money coming out from the communities, and the Jews had to appeal to Rome, and Rome had then to again affirm their legal status and the right to do that. And of course this all ends at AD 70 with the destruction of Jerusalem. But this is going on, and this is how we know there are Jewish communities in many of these places, because of their cities are mentioned in these edicts. We see this particularly in Josephus.
I'm getting ready to go down this thing. Okay. It's pretty steep here. I don't think this meets ADA requirement. I'll attempt to.
Videoing and walking?
Probably not, but I'm going to.
Okay.
I'm not going to look at the video ever. I'm just watching where I'm walking. Wow, survived it. That is super steep.
Oh yeah, you're right.
That's probably at least a 45.
Which is clearly an entrance of some sort.
I am in the theater. I just survived that walk. From there,
You go into the museum, and the first room is a whole row of documents of Turkey authorizing them to take this. They want to give the narrative. We did not steal
okay, the ladies made it. Well, they got one more section to go down.
Maybe you could see 10,000. I don't know. It doesn't look wide enough.
Is that the outside edge on both sides? No, 10,000.
But they have 3 sections here. So this is 1,
Count the
2.
rows, like 100.
I don't know. I mean, they could squeeze together. There's no chairs. I mean, it's just seats. So.
2, 4, 6. Oh, you can see our friends that are all the way at the bottom. Over there is the Temple of Dionysus, which means Dennis. Pretty much the same thing. And I get it. Okay. So that's the that marble base up there is that's the edge of the theater, or
above that, so that all the arches up there are the platform for the emperor, the temple to Trajan.
okay, got it.
And then you see that thing sticking out that's marble. That's part of the temple up there.
Okay.
Alright.
Yeah.
But if you hierarchy, then it's Turkey and also Istanbul is not allowed to go.
So look at how huge this threshold is. 1 piece of stone.
Seriously? Count this. Wow. Yeah, 1 piece of stone, you step out and you enter. That's the place where the priests were talking. From the bottom of a statue inside, you can see this. The base is still visible. Later on, the wall which built inside, it is the wall of the church. Okay, so the building was used as a church.
And here it's unique. Here they knocked out the east wall to build the apse. Modified. See the modification wall from the original.
Oh yeah, yeah.
He's gonna be offered a job soon.
Actually, we used to be able to, well, you can still crawl in there and come on up inside and send somebody to. It wouldn't have been marble, probably a combination of bronze and wood. The whole statue, no, that we know, all we know is that this is where the statue stood and the priest could come into place from there. So come on closer. Nancy has some wonderful information to share.
So much. But I do know, and I wrote an article a few years ago about practices both in Assyrian literature and Egyptian literature where a statue would be created. My assumption was always something small, but this is obviously big. But then in the text you would breathe life into this sort of divine cult statue, and then there are rituals that would remove the craftsman from the project, because who can build a place where a deity might dwell except God himself? Okay, so in the text you would ritually remove the footprints of the craftsman from this like divine animated statue, as though he was built from heaven or born in heaven is kind of the language.
So I threw their gold into the fire and out came this bull. Kind of idea.
Well, I mean, there were actual steps about how it was created, how breath was breathed into, and it animated the statue as though it was a god himself.
Would there be an access like this for priests
Well,
to participate in this?
In the text, there's nothing, but you have like, even in Egypt, you have these like switches or brooms where the footprints were removed.
Okay.
So it makes me wonder, I don't know, this is more complicated.
Developed. Maybe,
More developed, much bigger than the iconography we have in Egypt.
So would this be like the order of Nebuchadnezzar to build a statue himself, possibly, to be something
Maybe.
like that?
I mean, my interest with it was related to the craftsmen, because these craftsmen in Egypt and Assyria and the Babylonian texts, they have these incredible abilities. They have wisdom from the gods, they have knowledge from the gods, they have understanding from the gods. And this is what we see in the descriptions of Betzalel and Aholiab when it comes to the tabernacle temple building texts. They're divinely endowed in order to build the abode of Yahweh. We don't have ritual texts that remove them from the process, but there's some context there. Yeah.
Now, so if you want to see the modern interpretation, go to the Caesar's Palace website, and you can see the talking emperors on there. You know.
Does that also shed light on the polemical language we have with the prophets about the gods who, you know, we don't serve one made with
Of course,
hands,
made with hand and made with stone and
have eyes but can't see, and
exactly, because these handmade things were animated, and scholarship will also point that imagery back to the Genesis creation narratives about man and woman being created, breath breathed into them. Yeah, there's a lot there.
That's nice. Thanks, Nancy. That's good.
That's excellent.
There's a satanic image in there. I can see it.
It's the original temple. They also did this to the temple.
This is a 2,000-year-old Roman bridge. It's endured. Hundreds of earthquakes. Still on police on the city street here. 2,000 years ago it was built and it's still working. Good job, Roman.